worth paying a lot of attention to. But as a matter of fact, I think it's way more than 20%. I'd almost turn it around. I think we've got a 20% chance of getting this right. This is totally bogus quantification, but I think we've got a 20% chance of getting this right and about an 80% chance of getting it in some form or other wrong. And if we get it wrong, the chance of it getting it really, really wrong, that is strategic competition between the US and China not just escalating to the point where it prevents Asia working in future the way it has worked in the past, and that's the bottom line. Can we keep doing for the next few decades what we've done for the last few decades? I think the risk that it's not just that it starts getting in the way of Asia working properly, but that it actually degenerates to conflict is relatively high. I don't want to be misunderstood. I'm not standing here predicting a war between the US and China. I am saying that it's a possibility. It's a possibility that needs to be managed, because a war between US and China would be an exceptionally serious event for everyone, including for Australia. And that's a risk that needs to be managed, and it's a risk we need to pay careful attention to when we address the policy questions about what kind of Asian order we want. Our confidence that that won't happen, that we won't see Asia dragged back into the kind of contested environment it had in the first half of the 20th century, is in the end a confidence that the tensions inherent in the US-China relationship will be managed. And that means it depends on our confidence that the two sides can severally and jointly manage them. And the more conscious we are, and the more conscious they are of the risks of conflict, of how high the stakes are, the more confident we can be that they will manage them. One of the things that makes me nervous about the trajectory of Asia is that I don't detect either in Beijing or Washington as vivid a sense as I think they both should have of how bad the downside risks in this are and how much it's worth their while compromising in order to avoid them. So what are their choices? And again, I'm going to give you a stark account. I think that we can look at America's and China's choices as they confront this question in Euclidean terms. The United States, facing China's challenge, can withdraw. And it can withdraw. I don't think it's a very likely outcome. But anyone who thinks that the United States is arrow-guided into the Western Pacific, I think is misunderstanding how complex this could be. The United States will choose to stay in the Western Pacific if in the end it's in its interests. And I can easily imagine future Asias in which the costs of risks of strategic engagement outweigh the benefits to the United States. So it could withdraw. It could share power. As it confronts China's power, it could say we're going to share power with China. Or it could compete with China for primacy. But I don't think there are any other options. Now, of course, if you said that to a policymaker, they would say, oh, no, there are lots of other options. Of course, they'll try and muddle them. They'll try and find the grey area that's a little bit of sharing and a little bit of leading and maybe a touch of withdrawing. But the intermediate ground between those 3 points is very hard to occupy. And one of the reasons it's very hard to occupy is that the other side won't let them occupy it. America, of course, would like to lead and make it look like sharing in Asia, and share and make it look like leading at home in America. But in China, they won't want any ambiguity about whether they are still under American leadership or not. And in America, they won't want any ambiguity about whether America is still on top or not. So the critical audiences are going to make it very hard for American administrations to muddle whether America has chosen to share, to compete, or to withdraw. And the same is true of China. China has, in essence, two options, although there's some variations in each of them. It can either set out to lead in Asia, and lead in several different ways, but let's take the optimistic view, so it sets out to lead softly, nicely, or it can accept that it's not going to be able to lead in Asia and itself agree to share power with the United States. And there too, there's a sense, well, why can't we sort of fudge that? Why can't we pretend we're doing one thing or the other? But the people of China are not going to accept their government being unclear as their power grows to equal America's, whether or not they're still under America's thumb or not. And America is not going to be too keen on ambiguity as to whether it's still leader or not.